And hello, everybody. Welcome again to one of my podcasts. And I'm delighted to welcome this week the wonderful Christina Finseth onto the show. For those of you watching on YouTube, hello. For those of you listening, a virtual hello. Say hello, Christina.
Hello.
Good to have you here. So Christina describes herself as, and I'm just reading from your LinkedIn profile, a growth marketing lead at Interseller. We'll comment on that in a minute. Helping teams build predictable client and candidate pipeline with the outbound fire framework. I love avocados. We'll come to avocados at the end. Now I bumped into Christina via Justin Michael. We're now in some crazy Discord, insane chat around helping each other learn the best tactics for all types of cold outreach, be it phone, be it email, be it social, be it carrier pigeon, be it what have you. And I've been fascinated to watch Christina's and learn Christina's story around actually email and how to do this properly, but also at scale. So what we're going to cover off today is a bit of Christina's story, the good, the bad, the ugly around kind of email marketing, email prospecting, whatever you want to call it, what you're seeing, Christina, and then we'll talk around the framework that you have created on Teachable that people can sign up to and learn. But enough about me. So your story, Christina. Who are you? What are you? What's the deal?
Yeah, so I've had an interesting kind of trajectory in my career, which I think has led me to this point and why we're kind of having a conversation around, email outreach. So I spent the first 5-6 years of my career actually as a recruiting practitioner. Okay. So a lot of people don't know that, but it really plays into where I'm at now, which is more on the HR tech, recruitment tech side, working for and selling to people who I used to fill the role. So I spent that first 5 to 6 years in recruiting. I then made a transition into marketing on the dark side, the vendor side, is what I call it. And, it's been kind of history from there. So I've spent the majority of the last 5-6 years in marketing, from content marketing all the way to full stack marketing. And I did about a year-long experiment in sales over the last 12 months before I decided to pivot and go into growth marketing, where now I own all of the demand gen, top of funnel processes from the marketing and the business development side. So
okay, cool. So being an ex-recruiter myself as well in the UK, you have carried a bag. So you've been out there, you've done the hard yards, you've done the smile and dial. You don't get your seat back until you've made X number of appointments. Which I think is an interesting kind of, there's a big debate in the moment around the alignment of sales and marketing and how they now need to come hand in glove. And certainly historically, I used to talk to the marketing department, you're the colouring in department, and you're there to make it look pretty. You may well have said the same when you were in a sales role. And the fact that you've actually walked the walk in terms of what a seller has to go through, I think it's such a great kind of knowledge and insight to then bring into the world of marketing and growth marketing. Can we just unpack growth marketing a bit? Because what does that actually? There's marketing, digital marketing, then we have growth marketing. What's growth marketing actually mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's somewhat newer, at least in terms of, the SaaS world really adopting growth marketers in-house. And this could look different at multiple orgs. So for example, I have a friend who heads up growth marketing for Vidyard. And his whole process is to drive people to the freemium model because that is their lead gen funnel. For me, it's a little bit different. I'm owning business development. So now that's kind of broken off of, the bulk of that being on the AE plate. Now I've kind of built out the process and I help to make sure that everyone's able to run that framework, right? And run that process. And I'm the one that's kind of doing the back end analytical piece. But then there's also this whole marketing component. So again, that can look different in many organizations. It could be as simple as all of the demand gen efforts, but I'm actually running all the way through what we would call the pirate metrics in growth marketing.
Okay.
R is what it sounds like, which is why they call it pirate metrics. But it goes all the way through the entire customer journey, all the way through retention. So there's a lot of activities that fall in on the marketing side. And so it's really this trifecta of working really closely with customer success.
Yeah.
and with sales, and
Mhm.
making sure we're all aligned.
Awesome. And I've never heard that's a new one on me. The pirate metrics, because it's the R metrics. Okay. Intriguing. So let's talk to that. And we're going already off piece already, but that's why I do what I
No,
do with
that's
no real
okay.
framework. We'll come back. It's all right. So what are the R metrics then?
Yeah. So, and the reason it's like that is because the acronym, if
Hmm.
you were to say it out loud without saying the letters, it really is like R.
Okay.
And so what that focuses on is awareness,
Yeah.
acquisition,
Yeah.
activation,
Hmm.
revenue, retention, and referral. And so
Ah,
basically, growth marketing can impact tremendously on all of those areas of the business. And so
yeah.
that's where I'm kind of working my way. So being that I'm only, a couple months into this newly created role here,
Hmm.
really where I'm kind of focusing on right now are those two top pieces, awareness and acquisition,
Okay.
and
Awesome.
then kind of
And,
working my way down the
yeah,
funnel.
that's.
Yeah,
Well, I'm gonna have to check after this. I'm gonna have to go on to. We have to go. You have to share that with me on Discord, and I want to look at
I
that
will.
further because how you just talk that through that resonates with. I think that's going to work on any, no matter what you're selling, product or service. That kind of process is exactly the same, right? In terms of what you're trying to achieve. So let's bring it back
Okay.
into kind of what we were talking about. So cold outreach on email primarily, and
Yeah.
as a recipient throughout my life of marketing inverted commas emails from both consumer but more so in business to business as well, it doesn't have that good a reputation because you just get poorly thought out, poorly crafted, poorly timed, just generally completely irrelevant outreach in terms of what the proponent is. And we're in this strange world now in terms of data privacy and privacy. And oh my God, do I want to give my email address? Because if I give my email address, I know I'm just going to be bombarded with stuff that I don't want. Get people I know people that have completely just dummy accounts to use that email just to get the downloads of whatever it is they want, because email marketing in the round just isn't in that place. And then you get the stats thrown at you that, yeah, but we get like a 10% open rate and a 5% click-through rate and a 0.5% someone actually doing something rate. And my argument is, okay, if I had that conversion rate in a sales role, I'd be fired. Yet we're getting, I dare I say it's from the marketing automation platforms are kind of peddling, but this is a good kind of number. So what are you seeing differently? You mentioned this experience, or what have you seen
Yeah.
develop over the course of the, how long you've been, you mentioned the last couple of years you've been in this, to where we are today? And more importantly, then what do leaders of organizations, and I would suggest this as much needs to be at the board as it does, down into marketing, sales, and so on. What do they need to be thinking about to do things differently?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I want to just put a disclaimer out there that there is no one size fits all strategy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing that people need to be focusing on right now is taking in what's working for multiple people,
Yeah.
running tests and experiments on small segments, and really building out your own framework that involves the components that are moving the needle for you. What I hate, Alex, is these baseline numbers of what people say in the industry is acceptable, right? Oh, if you have at least, 30% opens, if you have at least like a 5% reply rate, and a 1 to 2% booked meeting conversion, you're doing great. Anything above that is awesome. And I think we're setting the bar way too low,
Yeah.
quite frankly. And I think one of the hardest switches for me, going from kind of a marketing one to many nurture email type of campaign
Mm-hmm.
to a sales role, was really starting to hyper focus on, okay, do I want to send 300 really well thought out templated messages that I know are going to probably move the needle at some point and get, let's just say, a 50% plus open rate,
Mm-hmm.
a 10% plus reply rate and a 1 to 2% booked meeting conversion
Yeah.
over a 2-week period, right? And that's respectable.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably what we would consider in marketing, on the marketing side, a really well performing campaign.
Yeah.
Or would I rather spend maybe a little extra time on the quality factor? And by quality, I mean researching and really finding some things to either A, build relevancy, or B, pull heartstrings.
Yeah. Okay.
And build 40 messages in the course of a day that end up converting 80% plus open, 30% plus reply rate, and 10 to 20% booked meeting rate in 3 days. That's a big switch.
Yeah, I know what I would take. But if we just kind of pause there then for that, because you raise an interesting point around kind of the one to many versus the one to few, I guess, from a sales perspective. And I believe this is where this whole conversation of sales and marketing need to align, is that marketing historically have been driven by kind of volume metrics, and they then present that to leadership and they go, hey, but we sent out 1,000 we clicked send and 1,000 emails were sent out, but it's not our fault that even if they do bounce rates or open rates or this, that's sales fault because the data's wrong or the data's wrong with CRM. Or they then go, hey, but this post got like 1 million impressions, and leadership go, 1 million impressions, that sounds good, not even know what an impression is, and all this kind of stuff, because it's kind of, we've done our bit, it's sales fault if they can't qualify or convert the MQLs and marketing qualified leads. Flip side is then sales blame marketing, going, well, all the leads are crap because they're not relevant to us because it's not the right segment, not the right person, not the right level, and so on. So what have you seen in your world that starts to kind of, because you've been across everything then, what to change this conversation? Because that's a real shift in the thought process of a marketeer, the thought process of a salesperson. And the reason I say this from a salesperson perspective is that too often do I see online conversations, I don't want my sales reps wasting time doing research when they could be just doing, the smile and darts. And if you haven't got a connect and sell type setup like our friend Jerry is kind of pushing through, then I kind of get why a salesperson or a sales leader, where they're driven by calls and connects, doesn't want somebody spending extra time doing research on social that can be time spent elsewhere.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a couple of different things that I have to say about that. One is, and I have a sticky note right by my desk right now, and it says, drive revenue, not MQLs. And so I think as marketers, what's happened, and it really comes from the top down, and your marketing leadership, your executive leadership, et cetera. If the goal is to drive as many people into the funnel as possible, then what happens is, as marketers, they get blurred by that, right? Mm-hmm. It's more of a volume game at that point. And then, okay, cool. Maybe the SDRs or BDRs, whatever you call them in your org, have to run through 100 people to find, 20 that are really quality. Yeah. But hey, we did our job because that's what we're measured on as success. What I think is really important is, in the org, I think of everything on the marketing side through the lens of, will this get us closer to our revenue goal? Mm-hmm. So which sounds horrible.
Well, it doesn't, because I don't think, and I think that this is kind of an interesting thing. For me, it doesn't sound horrible, but I'm a salesman through and through. Yep. And at the end of the day, it's all about revenue. Ignore profitability and cost of sale and all that kind of stuff. It is revenue, and money is not a dirty word in the right context. Yep. But I agree with you, especially in the last kind of 6 months and the weirdness of the pandemic in terms of should we be selling, not be selling, and blah, blah, blah. Again, I've seen some really bad attempts at trying to humanize the situation that we are in, but I don't think there's any. I believe that marketing should 100% be accountable to some extent to helping revenue, and the salespeople need to be accountable in terms of helping marketing understand what needs to happen to get to that first touch point. To quote you, getting that ticket to a conversation. The two start talking to each other internally and start to, you help me achieve this, and I help you achieve that. then the end result is we're getting to where we're trying to get to, which is that number, right?
Absolutely. And, I get the point of, when you have a new SDR coming into the seat, there's something to be said about letting them drink from the fire hose and getting as much experience and comfort in how they're talking to prospects, what they're hearing from prospects, and just really feeling comfortable with that. But I think, and what I'm trying to empower people to do is go back to their manager and say, I know that we have activity-based goals, which that's a whole nother conversation we can talk about another time, Alex. But I know I have to do X amount of activity, but can I spend the next week, 2 weeks, testing out this process that's a quality process and report back to you on data? And if it's not producing the right results from that test, then okay, great. I'll go back to some of the activity stuff. But I really think that this quality side of researching and really being thoughtful in your outreach, if it's going to convert higher, then you don't have to make 100 calls.
Yeah.
And I don't make cold calls. I don't make cold calls for a reason, because I found the framework that works for me and our team here at Interseller. We don't need to. And it doesn't matter that we're selling a cold email outreach tool. Yeah, okay, we're eating our own dog food. But at the same token, we haven't needed to pick up the phone because we're converting at a really high rate off of email alone. And so I think, again, it might be a combined strategy for some people. And in some industries, maybe volume works for you. But I really think people need to think about the fact that email is not truly free. It's not free.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So my CEO drills this all the time. Email, people think you can just go and send 1,000 emails tomorrow, right? And it's free. We're not paying for it. But what you are paying for is indeliverability issues, which also can take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer, to recover and bounce back from.
Right.
It's not free. And so I think more people just need to be educated on what goes into having a well-performing email system. And that means warming up your email, making sure that you're not sending the same template that everyone on the internet is sending too, because you already are hurting your deliverability. I mean, there's just so much we can go into on best practices there, but it's not free.
Okay.
It does cost you some things.
Yeah, that's that. And at the end of the day, it's actually the system, of course it's not free, because the system itself costs money to have the system, let alone everything else, the time and the effort, the marketing materials, the marketing costs behind that. But it's like everything else. We see the mobile phone as well as part of what we do. Would you ask a rep for the ROI of the cost of their mobile phone, their cell phone? Well, no. Well, maybe we should do the same with their laptop, et cetera, et cetera. So you said you've been running an experiment for the last 12 months, without kind of giving away the key secrets, and we'll come on to that. What sort of things have you been doing to get to the point that's now led you to building out your outbound fire framework, but also giving you enough data? And that's the key thing in all of this, the data to go, I know for a fact, disclaimer, one size does not fit all, but based on, tried and tested methodology, this kind of approach doesn't work. This kind of approach does work. So let's talk us through that.
Yeah. So first and foremost, again, there's been a lot of experimentation that led to this point, right? I can't even probably put a number on the amount of experiments I've run and the types of messaging that I've tested against the market. And what I found is really interesting. And maybe this is kind of serendipitous with everything that happened with COVID, but people don't need to say anything about their product, their service, the problem, or the solution in any of their outreach. And I think that's hard for us. And I'm going to say us because I've been in the sales shoes, us as salespeople to accept, because, a lot of us are trained, or at least have this understanding that if I'm reaching out to you today, Alex, that I need to tell you why I'm reaching out and who I am, and pack as much as I can in that email so that, like, I'm not just reaching out to you for, quite frankly, shits and giggles, right? Yeah. I'm reaching out to you because I have a product or a service, or I've worked with companies like yours. You don't need to do that. What I have found, and the data shows this, is that if you have a compelling enough message, and by compelling, it doesn't need to be anything about what you're doing. It could be about something you posted on the internet about, I don't know, Subarus. I love my Subaru, so that was the top of mind for me. But it could be about anything that might be relevant to you as a person, right? Because we're B to H, not B to C, B to B, et cetera, B to H. You will do your research. You will look at who I am. You're going to click on the website in my signature, gather some context, and then you're going to respond to me through that lens.
Okay.
And I know this because of the data, right?
Yeah.
Most of the replies that I get all did their research before they replied, and they already know why I'm reaching out without me having to spell it out for them.
Okay, interesting. So this is the recipient of your cold outreach, based on what you said in that initial outreach. They have done that. That's driven them to do their own research on you and the company Interseller to know why you are reaching out to them. Okay, that kind of flips everything on its head a little bit.
Totally. I know it's really hard to wrap around, and I'm always happy to share too if you want me to share my screen and just show some of this. But yeah, it's pretty strongly correlated between the people who are clicking on your website and doing their own kind of, and again, you're giving them the control to make that decision. You know, I get the email, I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, this is actually a really nice message. It seems thoughtful. It has nothing to do with anything, but it's really, really thoughtful. Let me see, what does Alex do? Oh, what's his company do? Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's like this buyer journey. People like to be selective in their own process.
So I'd love for you to share your screen without. That won't help us in terms of the listeners on the podcast because they can't see things.
They won't be able to see it. Yes.
could we then power technology, right? Some people prefer to listen, some people like to watch.
Of course.
So and again, I appreciate this is, one size does not fit all, but that's a really interesting. I'm trying to wrap that's already challenging my thought process because somebody's done the research on you based on you reached out to them by not actually saying, and I remember you talking about this in your intro video to your course, that you don't have to say anything about your product, your service, the kind of the why. So again, this comes down to authenticity. Because again, I think I believe I received emails where people have tried to take that approach, but it's just been really bad in terms of I get what you're doing here, but I don't really believe it because this feels kind of fake. So what sort of things do you encourage people to kind of pick up on as a genuine business to human outreach, which kind of keeps that balance?
Yeah, good question. So I think this has also kind of evolved over the last 6 months for me personally and our team. I'm taking out things that are unnecessary, like hope you're doing well, or hope your family is, you and your family are weathering the storm. I think people are kind of over that right now. We've all adapted, and COVID is just in the background. So I think, some of the things that I've been doing is I follow basically what I would call a building block template, especially on the first outreach, where you have a couple of elements that you plug and play, and then you still have to tie everything in a pretty bow at the end. And so I'll kind of give you an example here, especially for those who are listening. What I'll do is the first sentence is, I noticed that you recently posted about XYZ on LinkedIn and thought I would reach out. So whether it's an article they curated, doesn't matter. Your comment, and then I quote something that's interesting from that, was right on the money, and I couldn't agree more. That's it, right? So there's the personalization. It's different every time. So your deliverability is going to be better because you're not using that same template and drilling it home. What I then do is I say, with that said, and I do prompt for a call. Just to be very clear, I know there's a lot of critics out there that say don't prompt for a call. I do, but I think it's about the way you do it. I say, I'd love to get on a call with you for about 10 to 15 minutes to learn about you and then company name and your focus areas right now. I'd love to earn the right to talk through how Interseller might fit in.
Okay. I like that. I like the earn. The earn to write bit. It takes me back, way back when in my sales training, when the relationship, and I've seen this being talked about recently. It's like having a bank account. You got to put
Yep.
money in the bank account to then be able to take money out of the bank account, and that's the same if you go straight for the ask, and there's no money in the bank account to withdraw, then you're not going to get on the ask. So I like that turn of phrase in terms of earning the rights to,
Yep.
have that conversation with you.
Yeah. And it's, a couple of my friends say this all the time. It's about making deposits.
Yeah.
Right. And not withdrawals. And so, what the rest of my cadence kind of looks like, because I do think there's a science and an art to outreach. So art is being creative within that parameter. But I think, I'm very meticulous is about the steps and the day that I'm doing each of those steps. They have to be on point, because here's the thing. What's going to happen is, if I'm running a process and then the AEs are running the process, but then they're skipping a day or things like that, it's really hard to find that data to show that, yes, this is a repeatable process across the entire org. So it's really important to follow the same kind of cadence as you're testing that out. But the rest of the steps in that cadence are all gives.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it. There's no hard selling whatsoever. And there are LinkedIn touch points along the way, including voice messages and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not strictly all cold email outreach, but that's really the focus point and the highlight of the entire cadence.
And in terms of kind of cadences, and that's something which is alien to my world of professional services and law firm marketing and accounting marketing and kind of selling. But I believe that they can learn from it, because there is an ideal customer profile they have. They won't have it because they don't record CRM data very well, and then let alone having an interseller equivalent or an outreach or a gong or a lead feeder or whoever to record this. But is that, I take it, I'm going to make an assumption here that in order to be able to get those cadences, which you do know that don't work and don't work, you need a piece of technology platform to help drive that. And of course, you actually need the human beings to record that this went out at that time. This is the process. This is the time lag between touch point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and then how that touch point is, be it email, call, social, voice note, video notes, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's always helpful to have systems in place to record all this and keep yourself in check. The thing that I also preach is that you could really run this with any system. You could do this manually off spreadsheets if you really wanted to. Yeah. It's obviously going to be easier if you're empowered by tech, right? It's out there. But yeah, it's important to keep yourself completely on track. And then once you find what you believe to be your A, right? Now you've got this cadence. It seems like it's working. You've gotten meetings out of it. You've ran it on at least 50, high level prospects. Then you can start testing that, A/B testing. People think that you're just constantly testing two different things, but you should always have kind of your A and test against that. And then as that evolves, make changes to your process as new things come into play. I'm always evaluating that. And normally on a quarterly basis, I start to revamp messaging, take a look at the steps again, see what maybe we could do a little differently.
And that's things like having one email which says, hope you're weathering the storm, another email not having that statement, or a variation of, then just seeing, does that, taking that out, then impact the open rate or reply rate or book meeting rate,
Yeah, or just even like what you're asking at the end, right? Okay. What does your call to action look like? Are you asking an open-ended question? Do you want to test that against more of the like prompt for a call? What makes sense, right? And so I think once you have that A kind of at least mostly figured out, it makes it easier for you to test long term. But again, you can run this as a manual process. It would be a little painful just thinking about it, but and you could be done. Well, and the other thing is, like, you don't have to build your own collateral for the gives either. So if you have people who are listening to this right now who are like, oh, I don't have like an ebook, I don't have things to give that I think would be relevant to my audience, curate thought leaders who would be relevant. And so that's what I do. I infuse other people because, quite frankly, content from other people that they respect is going to fare way better than if you attach your one pager or you leak to like an ebook that you guys wrote, right?
100. Preaching to the converted on that one. From what I'm talking about from a social perspective, just if you just
Yep.
broadcast corporate content on social, no one's going to engage. Actually leverage third-party content from influencers or thought leaders, and I'm careful using the word influencer because they then think like, you know, Instagram influencers, but people that are respected in their industry. And then if you can somehow tie it back to what you do or what they can learn from that, etc., that's way more powerful. And to another point, other than time that you need to invest to go and find that, then, you know, Google Alerts, as for God's sake, or if you have a Sales Navigator, it's just super easy for that to curate that content for you. It's all out there, right? That content already exists. And are there, in terms of your testing, there's always another one I'm seeing, you know, debate on, you know, our channels within Discord and so on, but on other channels, the best, and I get these emails on a daily basis, but what the best, you know, the subject line is in terms of getting that open rate. And I do recognize that, you know, you have a specific product selling to a specific market, but are there some do's and don'ts around that?
Yeah. So what I found, and again, I've tested tons of subject lines. First name in the subject line already get your open rates up.
Okay.
Keeping your subject line under, I believe it's 40 characters.
Yep.
25 to 40 characters, so that doesn't get cut off on mobile, right? Yep. And really, what I found, these are the best performing ones that I've had personally. I'll do something like, Alex, about your LinkedIn post. Yep. Alex, I disagree with so-and-so's post too. Maybe they commented on something.
Yeah.
Or just something simple like, Alex, let's chat.
Okay.
Or Alex, let's connect. Something very, very simple, but keeping that first name in there. Don't worry about needing to say, convert 10% of blah, 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 right? You don't need to say anything like that in the subject line. Remember, the components of your email and the components of your sequence should all be thought of through the frame of what's the goal for this. And so you have it here, your ticket to a conversation. When I'm doing a subject line, I'm thinking in terms of, okay, what's going to get them to open?
Yeah.
In the body of the text, it's, okay, what's going to get them to do their research and respond, right? And engage with me. We don't want to be thinking of that as like, again, jam packing with all this stuff about who you are, what you do, why they could benefit. Are we thinking about the sell already? It's in the back of our mind, but you're not going to get there with that first email. That's not the goal, right? And if it is, and it happens, cool, that's exciting, but it should really be thought of in that frame.
And do you so it's interesting because because I get so many of them, the last two examples that you gave me of Alex, let's connect or Alex, let's chat, for me, I'd probably not. I might open it, I might not, but if you reference a LinkedIn post, because in my world, it's guaranteed to be opened 100% in terms of what's what. But when you're referencing a social media post, and I guess it could be LinkedIn, could be Twitter, could be Insta, wherever, it doesn't really matter. Do you put a link to their post?
No.
The reason the way my mind is working, if I put a link to their post, then they may click on the link, which then may guide them to look at my profile. And then if they've looked at my profile, I know that they've opened the email and they've then done more from an engagement perspective. So why do you not put the link in? Is that to save time, or is it something you just don't do?
Well, because again, you're referencing their own post.
Yeah.
Like there's no, in my opinion, unless you're trying to get them to look at something that might be useful to them, I usually err on the side of not including that many links. And again, you're spelling out in the first two sentences exactly which post it is. So like in your case or anyone else's case who maybe posts a lot, right? Like Justin Michael, if I was going to call him out and do this process for him, he'll know in those first two sentences exactly which post it is, right? Without me having to link it. But I get your point on trying to take them on a journey. But the last thing you want to happen is they're on your email, they click that link, and then they get sucked into the LinkedIn hole, and then they've just like lost that traction from your email. So get them to read it, and then they'll engage in some form or fashion, with your website, whatever.
No, that's a valid point. I hadn't even thought about that. They go onto LinkedIn and they're in the social media world, and you've distracted from what you're trying to trying to achieve. And then in terms of
I was going to say
something.
one more point that I want to make, because I found this out the hard way. So anyone who's listening, who's going to follow the approach of using someone's LinkedIn post to start a conversation, make sure that you either like or do something with that LinkedIn post, because the last thing you want is to write this really thoughtful email about how it resonated with you and you really loved the post they made about XYZ. And then they reply back and say, well,
hang on 2 seconds, I'm just going to put this on Zoom. So apologies for that slight interlude. So Christina, you were saying, make sure that you at least engage on the post that you reference, correct?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like a well thought out comment, because sometimes I'll leave that for later as part of my cadence, but at least give a reaction to the post so that it's not only amplifying it to your network, right? But it shows them that, okay, you're not just full of smoke in your email. And I have been I'm saying this from experience, because I literally have been called out on this before. They're like, well, you really liked my post and this is really thoughtful, but you didn't even like it. So, so again, just a quick tip that came to my mind before we get off that topic.
I think that's completely valid. So with all this in mind, then this is then brought together, this very exciting kind of project for you in terms of the your outbound fire framework, which is on Teachable. I'll add the link to the to this podcast and blog and so on. So what is this new project, this new venture that you've launched?
Yeah, so the outbound fire framework came as a result of just my experimentation and sheer passion for cold email outreach, and specifically doing it differently than what anyone else is talking about on the market really right now. And so what I do is I really break down this entire framework. And again, it's kind of equal parts mindset shift and behavior change. As well as the execution piece, and really running through exactly what those steps look like and what the content looks like at each step. So I basically go over all of that. The reason I did the mindset shift in the beginning is because, again, most of us aren't thinking that way. And so there's a little bit of that behavior switch that needs to go off in the beginning. And so what the framework stands for, so FIRE stands for something. It's fix, right? So fix your mindset. And really your mindset around what a sales email should and could look like. I is for imagine. So imagining yourself in your prospect's shoes. What would get you to respond, right? Everybody says this, but nobody actually really thinks about it. Nobody does it. You get emails and you're like, did you really imagine yourself in my shoes? R is for research, which to me arguably is the most important critical aspect and the key differentiator between a okay sales email, a poor sales email, and a really good one. So we go over a whole section of research, and then execution, which is obviously everyone's favorite part, is putting it into action and what those action steps look like. So it's a framework that's worked. It's kept me from having to pick up the phone, which I'm very thankful for, because that's not my forte. And really I'm trying to get everybody to start seeing that 80% plus open rates and 30% reply rates and 10% booked meeting rates should be more of a baseline for success.
So the old quality over quantity argument, which I'm a massive proponent of. Do less for more, right?
Absolutely.
And who's the intended audience?
Anyone who is either in some sort of sales development capacity or responsible for running their own outbound, right? Which most of us have to do at least some portion of outbound, right? And also recruiting teams, right? Recruiting teams who, more external recruiting teams that need to do both business and candidate development. This could be very relevant to them as well, and doing that differently.
Awesome. And so how many hours investment would somebody, once they've signed up to your course, sent you the payment, of course, nothing in life comes for free. How many hours of investment is this going to require over, however long?
Listen, from the course perspective, it is a little less than 3 hours, and
Cool.
it's broken up into no more than like 25-minute videos.
Awesome.
So that's very digestible and actionable.
Yeah.
And then you get the entire template
Nice.
structure. So all the text, everything is broken down into documents so that you can use it. As far as applying it, I usually coach people to do, a test of 50 to 100 prospects.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can reach out to me. We can talk about how we can tweak it for their use case, et cetera. But yeah, I'd say almost a 3-hour initial investment for the course.
Awesome. Perfect. That sounds great. I'll be checking that out for sure. So to end, avocados, what's the deal?
It's very random because, and this is going to go back to COVID, which I hate talking about at this point. At the beginning, we all needed to start doing Zoom meetings. I was still in sales at that time. And so, here I am getting on Zoom meetings a whole lot more with demos. And it was an icebreaker for me. And so when I found out that Canva, which I know you use too, had these virtual backgrounds that were super playful, I was like, you know what, let me check these out. And I really liked this one,
Right.
which was really weird and random.
So for those that are listening, Christina has avocados as a background. For those that are listening and can't see this,
yes,
she has avocados as her background.
It's my background, and it has become my signature, which is really, really just, I don't know, it's really weird. But now any Zoom I get on, people expect to see the avocados, and those who know.
Yeah. Now I know. It's you love avocados.
Now you know.
Awesome. And I think it's that, it's having that unique selling point. It's having that which makes you different and stand out for everybody else. And I'm a huge proponent of that. Back to the business to human. We're all humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We all have good days and bad days, etc., etc. So there's a good day because I'm talking to you. That has been super insightful, super awesome, and I mean, there's a lot of super there. So I apologize. Where can people find you?
Hey, listen, I live and breathe on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So, Christina Finseth. You can find me. You'll see avocados probably in my picture. I just changed it out. I did have like the whole suit jacket. I was like, man, I need to change my picture. That is so not me anymore. It doesn't really give a true representation of my personality. But if you've gotten to a page that has avocados,
It's the right
chances are it's probably me.
It's
So,
probably you.
yeah.
I will put the links to your LinkedIn profile on this, along with the links to your course. Highly recommend everybody should check that out and sign up to it. If you've listened to this, if you enjoyed it, and you reach out to Christina, please do mention this podcast or this vlog. Otherwise, Christina, I'll probably see you very shortly on Discord and the chaos and the insanity that is happening over there. Those that know, those that don't, well, you have to figure out for yourselves. But thank you. I really, really do appreciate your time and insights today. It's been great. And to everybody listening, as always, thank you very much. If you want to be on the podcast, reach out to me. If you want to recommend somebody being on the podcast, reach out to me. But otherwise, have a cracking day wherever you may be in the world. But that's enough for me. And bye-bye, Christina.
Bye. Thank you.